Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 27th audio file in the audiocast series known as the Q News Patriot. I am the Q News Patriot. My name is SGAnon. It's great to be back with you. It has been a few days, hasn't it? A lot has been going on these last few days. Last week, 11/15, we had the speech from 45 that many of us have done some very good decoding on. Trusting our gut, trusting time of war, trusting the need for certain things. And so tonight's audio file is kind of cover a little bit over the last 7 days, and then we'll move into some directionality about where we're going. I've got a couple of informational updates that I think all of you will appreciate, but we're not going to be on here for very long this evening. For those sending positivity and prayers for the little one, I very much appreciate that. He is doing quite a bit better. We do herbal tea, Vicks, all those sorts of natural remedies. My little one is from a previous romantic relationship in a life that is now a past life of mine. And so his mother and I are not, his mother is not my wife. His mother and I are not together. Both good people, but not good together. And so understand that in my parenting arrangement, we have essentially a 50-50 setup. And so I have to give deference and consideration to the things that she wants to do, things that she may choose to do in her time with him. And there's a little recourse that I can do that I have really outside of that. And honestly, there's no reason for the recourse. I was surprised that many of you out there wondered why I was allowing my young one to go to public schools. The reason is very simple. I work a day job, and I am not in a position of financial clout to simply pull him from school and bring my wife to a stay-at-home situation. We don't live like that. We live just the same as everyone else out there. Many millions of patriots around the world over these last couple of years have been faced with decisions regarding family direction, where to place their children, and where people are safe, that had to be levied against what was feasible and possible for them and what was necessary for survival and continuity of the household. Ironically, we've all kind of been in a continuity of government situation at home at our own budget table, haven't we? And so understand that there are always more things at play than what you might think, both with myself and with others, with the grocery store clerk and the food service waiters and the individuals that you cross paths with on any given day that enable you to accomplish the goals and purposes and intents that you have. We're all dealing with many things outside of our own awareness, and it's important to keep that in mind as we go through this journey, because that's what this journey is all about. This journey is learning how to appreciate the perspective of others and the need for things to be a particular way when we ourselves are extremely dissatisfied and discontent with those circumstances. None of this war has been easy, right? None of it has been what we would call a cakewalk. We've lost family and friends. Many of you have emailed me at your wit's end with your spouse, or with your children, or with your grandparents, just different generational, different meetings of the minds, everyone living their spiritual journey and going in different directions. And that's part of this journey, is understanding that all of us are on a spiritual path. All of us are on a spiritual walk of awakening. And this journey is about bringing that into awareness and focus for each of us organically and originally, and in a way that is meaningful and impactful for all of us. There's a lot to be hopeful for. We talk a lot about hope. We talk a lot about optimism and positivity. We talk a lot about seeing the light and allowing it to illuminate and destroy the darkness. Um, that being said, the darkness is still overwhelming sometimes, right? The darkness is still difficult to wade through. It becomes miring and exhausting. Um, your feet, your knees, spiritually are weary, and that's all right. We press forward because we have a future to create. We press forward because we have children to save. We press forward because we have generations to safeguard for um, hundreds of years to come. Um, your great, 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 great grandchildren will look back in this era of time with awe and wonder at how humanity, the very best of humanity, was able to band together and prevent the world from falling into chaos at a point in time where a large coordinated military operation for freedom began removing essentially traitors to humanity from governments all around the world. And so this story that we're living, while unpleasant, we have a much greater goal in mind, and we can do it together. But we have to keep our wits about us. We have to keep our emotions in check. That doesn't mean not to feel them. You need to feel them and identify with your feelings and be honest with yourself and with your spouses and friends and children if you have to be. There should be communication. It should be given in love, but it should be conveyance of the truth and the true standing of where you are emotionally, because that is part of this journey also, is learning to um, focus and hone and rein in those emotions for a greater goal. They can serve a wonderful purpose when leveraged and channeled correctly. And sometimes we have to move those out of the way so that we can achieve a much greater, more universal goal. And that's what we're doing now. We are moving through a worldwide operation to drain the deep state. The deep state is essentially a cancer that has infiltrated every soft tissue cell of the entire earth. And so, in order to drain that, we have to be very careful so that we don't destroy the organism and so that we don't cause further damage and ruin our chances at a successful future. So, it's kind of a long, non sequitur, but it's very appreciated. All of you out there, the thoughts, the prayers, the love, the support. I send all of that back to each of you. Um, we win this. We're well on our way into winning this. We do have some pinch points ahead. We do have some more things that are going to be they're going to test our mettle a bit. We can take it because we are proud and strong. We can take it because we were selected for this journey, because we have a greater duty to our posterity and all of the generations to come. And each of you out there, I know, listening to this audio file at some level resonates with that message. To safeguard the legacies of future generations is why we are here. It's what we're doing. And so we're going to get into a little bit tonight, some research that I've been doing. I'll give a couple of short little info blurps that were passed along to me. And then we will talk a little bit about the recent pandemic treaty that has a zero draft, I believe, which was published on 11/18, 2022. That's going to be significant because I think it plays into the worldwide takedown. That is not intel. That is not info. That is simply my assessment of a very reasonable conduit for bringing in the military at all levels of society everywhere to save humanity from destruction. And so we're going to move into our file tonight, understanding that we do have some heavy stuff, but that's okay. And we are going to conclude always on a positive note, because we are going to win this war. We are going to see freedom brought to the world, to see a debt slavery system removed, to see fair commerce and trade at all levels in our society, and to see genuine freedom of we the people in all areas. And so that is how we will conclude tonight. Let's move right along into some world power shifts and a little bit of research that I've been doing. So we have this situation right now with Russia and Ukraine. Russia has begun a full-scale bombardment of the Ukrainian energy grid. so effectively so that the um, puppet Zelensky in Ukraine, well, actually, he's not in Ukraine, but he's discussing things about Ukraine as if he were in Ukraine, has said that Russia is intending to weaponize the bitter cold of winter against the Ukrainian people. Without sounding dark, it is very important to understand that the Ukrainian people are caught in a very unfortunate web, but we cannot stop our operation for those individuals who are caught. Russia, or caught in the middle, excuse me, Russia is doing its level best to provide humanitarian aid to civilians, but Russia is also dealing with um, gray areas, mixed mercenaries, sleeper cells, plants in certain areas. I mean, this is irregular guerrilla warfare at its finest, and the Russian war machine is attempting to do its very best to preserve its territorial integrity and the safety of Russia and the safety of Europe, while also identifying combatants successfully and correctly and identifying civilians that need humanitarian assistance. And so this process is extremely difficult. It's made much more difficult by the fact that the Ukrainian armed forces, descendants of the true Nazis of the old days, have absolutely no problem with committing war crimes and then using the optics to blame Russia. They certainly have no issue attempting infiltration and um, sabotage operations, some of which do have limited success for a while, and they create little hiccups and they slow the process down, even though they don't derail the full train, so to speak. And so Russia is being just very, very careful and very deliberate. Um, Based on the things that I've been reading online, it really seems like Russia, like Xi and Putin, are um, waiting to pull the big trigger. It seems as though they're coordinating with one another. Xi was recently seen um, publicly with several members of the worldwide Kabbalist governments, the Manchurian governments, and in his own very proper, very passive, but very deadly serious way, made overtures to let them know that China would not be participating in their vision for the future. And so understanding that and understanding that Chinese patriots are also in Ukraine alongside Russia at this point in limited fashions, that tells me that we have operational coordination that we're not, or excuse me, we have an operational point that we haven't arrived yet, even though the coordination has been established. Um, I believe that point will result, as I've said several times, in the full-scale Russian occupation of the country of Ukraine. Remember that Ukraine, when it filed for sovereignty, if you will, its international recognition, it failed to declare a border. Additionally, Ukraine broke a treaty with the Russian Federation, and I believe it was 2017 or 18, that essentially gave Russia and Putin the legal right to handle the Ukrainian problem as if it were an internal policing action. And so it's not a difficult leap when you understand how the literal law of the lands and the law of the militaries, the law of war that's being used, how to interpret that on a geographical, topographical plane. We simply have an issue here where Russia is dealing with basically a very enormous rebellion. They are attempting to reincorporate an area that has ancestrally always been home to Slavic peoples, the Slavic nations. But unfortunately, about 1,000 years ago, it was hijacked by a group of extraordinarily evil, sick people, um, and has been essentially a thorn in the side of the entire world ever since. And so, understanding that, just know that Russia is very, um, how to say it, they're very ready. They are currently conducting back channel negotiations with the Belarusian Ministry of Defense and the governments of Lithuania, Estonia, and Latvia, um, essentially letting them know that they have all of the evidence. There are infrastructural systems that still have to be dealt with beneath the ground in those areas of Eastern Europe. And we are working in the background to make sure that everyone is on board. Um, Speaking about working in the background, something that was passed along to me that I think all of you will appreciate is that Erdogan and Putin have been talking very frequently, um, privately in the last few weeks, and Turkey is set up to begin a process to leave the NATO union. Um, that is that's enormously symbolic for a lot of reasons, many of which those great Anons out there can get into a little bit better than I can. But it does go back generations. It deals with the Ottoman Empire and the subversion of the Ottomans to the Kabbalist deep state system. Um, Additionally, Turkey and Putin are working out an agreement for um, inter-organizational cooperation for any issues that Turkey has militarily with relation to the Middle East. And so we have world power shifts going on that are very strong. Turkey is a major commerce and trade hub. It always has been. It is located essentially on the border, the bridge, if you will, between the European continent and the Eurasian plain, and certainly into the Middle East. They also have a very large amount of influence over the Northeast Mediterranean Sea. And so understanding that we have different alliances forming publicly at this point, giving us evidence of this worldwide military alliance, which we see every day in the skies above both North America and Europe and in the Pacific theaters. Um, there's simply just so much happening, but we have a hard time, I think, here, especially in the United States of America, wanting to focus on those worldwide involvements because um, we're very upset about what was done here. We're very upset about the situations that have been heaped onto what we always believed to be a free and fair society. And so we have difficulty getting out of our tunnel vision, if you will, and appreciating just how large a scale this plan is. To put it into some perspective, we are attempting to change the last 50 to 60 years of um, brainwashing, the formation and forging of um, axes of evil, alliances that were against humanity and that were out to destroy us. We are attempting to take all of that and reverse it while also preserving the sanity, if you will, to the greatest extent possible, of the mass consciousness of we the people everywhere. This is no small task. We are dealing with MK Ultra psychological warfare. We are dealing with irregular warfare at all levels of society. We're dealing with generational entrenchment of beliefs and habits. And we're also dealing with an enormous amount of pride in different areas. And so, understanding that, we have to um, appreciate the precision, the deliberation, the purposeful maneuvering that has gone on in this military operation to allow us to unseat some of these alliances, to reshape the world's bureaucratic systems and drain most of them, to reclaim the assets that we are all, I hate to use the term entitled to, but they're ours. So I believe we are entitled to them. They were stolen from us. Um, and to provide safeguards for our future security and educate the masses. Um, this is a Leviathan operation, if there ever was one. And so understanding that helps us to find that place of peace, because there are moving parts. There are things that are occurring. There are things that are happening and have been happening. Just recently, I have the privilege of listening to Derek Johnson do a decode on the Trump speech. I didn't get quite 58 comms, but I got a large number of the same comms that Derek and others got. Very good patriots out there that are just willing to look between the lines and trust with an open mind and heart. And we have a very momentous sort of power shuffle, if you will, in the world right now. Just recently, the Brazilian military began serving arrest warrants on members of the National Congress and the Superior Electoral Court for their complicity in allowing the theft of a Brazilian election. Commensurate with that, we saw Bolsonaro today, I believe it was today, it might have been yesterday, file a document with the Superior Court stating that he should be declared the lawful winner simply because he was the last known leader in the race before the race went so awry that it was no longer certifiable and valid. And so we'll see what happens with that, but understand that we have optics going on in all areas of the world to protect the mass consciousnesses of all of us to the greatest degree possible. Now, why is that? Well, the reason for that is because when you're conducting a surgical, large scale special operation in the military or in any military around the world, any sort of deep intelligence operation, any sort of dark op or red operation, you need quiet and calm and order. You cannot have chaos. Chaos leads to unpredictables and uncontrollables. Every variable must have an accounting and must be accounted for. Every variable must have a plan of action to be implemented when that variable is in play, if that variable is ever in play. We cannot have unpredictability in this operation. We are using what I believe to be a smoke and find method. That's my own personal coinage for smoking them out and identifying your target. And so some of them are smoked out financially. Others have to be smoked out with public pressure. Others have to be smoked out with polarity and polarization between political narratives. But whatever the rationale used, we still achieve the same goal, which is identification of the enemy versus identifying individuals that are simply caught in the middle, maybe thought that they were going to get rich, but they're really not willing to go so far as to consign humanity to oblivion. And so that's a great deal of this operation is, we have defections at different levels. We have switching of sides. We have confidence rising and falling at different points. Morale is a concern for all military operations everywhere. And so just appreciate that this is a worldwide event and we have worldwide implications going on. Speaking of worldwide, we should discuss just for a moment the issue with the financial system now in Europe and around the world. I'm not a financial advisor, and FTX is really kind of out of my purview of true understanding, although I do see it to be the largest money laundering Ponzi scheme ever contrived for operation. That being said, the financial situation right now in Europe is very dire. The financial situation in Europe was directly affected by FTX as the White Hat Alliance reclaimed an enormous amount of the deep state's hidden assets in that operation. What that did was it took away enough money from the central banking apparatuses, the Rothschild dynasties, if you will, of Europe, that we've thrown them into a panic state. The reason we have discussions for price caps for European energy right now in several governments in and around Western Europe and South Central and kind of Mid-Eastern Europe is because they are running out of money and they don't have enough money to continue to buy Russian oil and gas at the price that Russia is asking for it. And so price caps are a way to mitigate your own damage, except Putin has made it very clear that there will be no sales whatsoever to any nation that implements price caps. In other words, we've caught them in a rock and a hard place. You can either pay us all of your money, in which case you no longer have power to influence and control, or you can institute budget means on your end to protect your power and money, in which case we will simply not give you the raw material you so desire, and you will also lose your power and control that way. It appears that we are opting in, at least in the French and German governments, we're opting for the more painful of the two. I've been discussing European blackouts now for a number of weeks. I encourage European patriots, if you are listening, to prepare for those blackouts. They will start intermittently and then they will grow in length and severity. How long they will go, I'm not certain. I would absolutely prepare myself for at least 30 days of questionability, possibly longer. Remember that this is very much about the survival of humanity in certain levels. And um, while we do have a white hat patriot alliance that we'd like to say is in control, that control is really kind of tenuous. They're in control, yes, but they're only in control of systems that they've not been in control of in the past. We still have other systems that are being vied for. We still have other systems that need cleaning out. Some of these government apparatuses in the European continent are of that latter option. They still have to be addressed and cleaned out further. Um, Going right along with that, some good news to pass, I guess, as it pertains to Germany. I have a lot of you from Germany that are very, very concerned about what's going on in your nation. There are patriots in the German military and in the military of the United Kingdom that have begun a process to implement a provisional takeover, if you will, a provisional turning over of government authority to those patriot militaries. And they are instigating a process to leave NATO in the background. And so this would be an absolute back-breaking blow to the NATO alliance for a nation like Germany or the United Kingdom to begin a process publicly for separating themselves from NATO. How this plays out optically, I'm not certain, because we still have traitors in government at the public level who desperately need to be dealt with. And so I guess my message for those European patriots is twofold. There are great things ahead for the reshaping of power structures in the Western world, in Europe, certainly as it pertains to Europe and their relations with Russia and other countries. But it is also going to be a very intense period of change, a very difficult period of time for those of you in Europe. And so I encourage you to be careful, be thankful, make sure to find those grateful moments every day and prepare for exactly what we have been living. This is a world war. This is a war for the future of mankind. And we should stop occasionally and appreciate the seriousness of that. Speaking of the seriousness of that, we're going to talk a little bit about this item called the International Treaty for Pandemic Preparedness and Prevention. This particular document is receiving essentially no real true coverage in the mainstream space, surprising no one, but could be extraordinarily effectual in our society. It could have very far-reaching implications both for the United States and all member nations. But it's my sneaking suspicion that it could also be an Achilles heel, if you will, for the deep state, a weakness, a catch-22 that they simply can't ignore. It is such a savory opportunity for them to consolidate power around the world. This is truly an establishment of a bureaucratic one world government system. If you've read this document, which you can find on Scribed, it is by far the most effective, most concrete step, most publicly obvious step that has ever been taken, certainly in my lifetime, to bring all countries in the world under subservience to one group of individuals at the very top. We know who those individuals are, and we know that all countries in the world have been subservient in the background and in silence, essentially all of our lives. But this is a public overture to subvert sovereignty, to remove constitutional process in independent nation states, and to make those processes and all of the citizenry and governments of those nation states subjugated basically to a World Health Organization bureaucratic oligarchy. And so a couple of excerpts from this document we're going to discuss. Let me see here. Article 8 of this document, increasing research and development capacities. I'm not going to go through this entire document. It's around 30 to 40 pages, but we are going to read some highlighted points very quickly here so that we can kind of spring forward into the rest of our discussion. Increasing research and development capacities. Measures towards this end, each party or nation shall promote measures to encourage the sharing and gradual increase of resources, both human and financial, from public sources for research and development of pandemic response products, which are vaccines and pharmaceuticals. Subsection C, promote rapid, regular, and timely sharing of pathogens, genetic sequence data, and relevant metadata through effective, standardized, real-time, global, and regional platforms. This is just a lot of legalese to tell you that they want to have full legal ability across all international boundaries and borders to commit bioterrorism, to bio-research, to weaponize viruses and then share those weaponized viruses and the research that it took to arrive at them with no consequences. You see here. In another section of the document, we have Section 2, subsection A, strengthen public health functions for pandemic prevention and preparedness to ensure pandemic response by means that include measures to build and reinforce surveillance systems, including One Health, outbreak investigation and control through interoperable early warning and alert systems across public and private sectors. If you have heard the term or seen the term One Health anywhere in your communities, in your hospitals, doctors' offices, healthcare conglomerates, we have a One Health hospital here local to where I am. It's a healthcare system, and they call themselves One Health. That particular phrase is a telltale sign that the system you are dealing with is a direct extension. There is no separation, a direct extension of the biopharmaceutical World Health Organization mass murder agenda, and they intend to implement those steps within those institutions. We already know that the military medical industrial complex is being shown for what it is, and it's managed to wreak an upsetting amount of carnage on the world. We have a very unfortunate tragedy that we have all lived through as it pertains to our healthcare systems turning on us and taking the lives of family and friends, and in some cases attempting to take ours. And so understand that as we learn to read these codes, as we learn to paint these individuals from the top down for who they are, it becomes much easier to cleanse the system from the bottom up. One Health is one such tell. Another area in this discusses measures to build capacities in genomic sequencing, as well as in analyzing and sharing such information to inform risk assessment and trigger rapid response. Measures to develop prevention strategies for epidemic-prone diseases. Measures to ensure equitable and affordable access to health technologies, which is coded language for we're going to take away your ability for quality care. Strengthening and sustaining a skilled and competent health workforce. Develop and sustain up-to-date universal platforms and technologies for forecasting and timely information sharing, including building digital health capacities. In other words, your entire medical record will not be yours anymore. It will be available to be shared anytime, all of the time, every time, with anyone involved in this larger medical matrix that these sick, twisted creeps are attempting to implement onto the world. Pardon me just a moment. I want to make sure here. Here we go. This was one of my favorite moments. Promote global, regional, lines. Promote global, regional, and national political commitment, coordination, and leadership for pandemic prevention, preparedness, recovery, and response by means that include establishing appropriate governance arrangements rooted in the Constitution of the World Health Organization. That is very easy to interpret. Towards this end, each party or nation shall promote national political commitment, coordination, and leadership by means that include establishing appropriate governance arrangements rooted in the Constitution of the World Health Organization. Each party to this treaty will subvert their sovereignty to the supremacy that is the bureaucratic elite. That is how that line actually reads. We could continue on in this document. This document reached a final first draft, if you will, 4 days ago. Ratification would mean a bona fide, at least in the United States of America, would mean a bona fide violation of the Constitution, a cessation of American sovereignty, a subjugation of the American nation to the principles of the UN, and could leave us in a very problematic scenario. And so understand that I recognize the seriousness of all of that, and I recognize the heaviness of this conversation as it is right now. I also recognize that we have a situation where multiple factors are at play. We are still conducting cleanup operations. We are still conducting search and destroy operations with bioweapon laboratories. We are still neutralizing climate weapons and threats. We have neutralized a large majority of weapons of mass destruction that are unaccounted for, but we still have cleaning to be done in certain key areas. On top of that, we have a financial system that has not crashed. We have a petrodollar that, while wounded, is still a very dangerous animal and still feeds a large majority of nefarious activity around the world. That's why BRICS was such an important part of this alliance's plan to forge a commerce system, a trading system that could keep the world in balance as we took the United States dollar out of the reserve currency status and brought the dollar system to its knees. We still have some sort of large-scale false flag to expect from the deep state, and we still have some sort of announcement for a new financial government, and we still have to return POTUS 45. There are so many angles. There are so many ways that this could go. Q tells us that a scare event is necessary for the sleepers. Q tells us that only at the precipice and then places in the brackets moment of destruction will people find the will to change. Q tells us that it's going to be biblical. Q is not known for overstatements. Biblical is an enormous word. Biblical is a word that ascribes events so grand and colossal in scale that they can only be ascribed as supernaturally involved and influenced, perhaps deliverance being one of those traits, or just the scale of a conflict. Regardless, we understand that this system goes deep, 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 deep. The Mossad, operating out of the puppet state of Israel, have agents all around the world, hundreds, thousands of agents all around the world. They have blackmail, power and control, influence, and in some cases, direct ability to control and direct lives. It is just such an enormous monster to face down and beat. And so, understanding that, we need a way to usher in a number of things. We need to usher in a return of the Republic of the United States. We have to accomplish all of the things that we just mentioned a moment ago. We went through that short list. We have to place the mass majority, the largest majority of we the people in the world, in a position that they will accept and ask for military help and for their patriots in their countries to do their job and to stand up. And so something like this pandemic treaty could be that sort of catalyst. Now, this is just my thoughts. I don't have intel or information on what the scare event is. I've heard a nuclear threat. I've heard climate. I've heard biological warfare again. I have heard mandatory inoculations. I have heard lockdowns. I've heard a great number of very well thought out, very well researched theories on how this could go. regardless of how it goes. I think understanding that the wonderful sleepers out there, um, understanding that they're going to need to feel some amount of fear directed towards those individuals that right now they believe are the best of humanity. A great example of this, someone in the course of my daily job, I interacted with someone and we had a discussion that kind of veered into the political spectrum. It's always very tactful and slow and diplomatic about um, inquiring about their opinions and how they felt. And I was met with, and this individual was well into their 40s or 50s, plenty of gray hair. I was met with one of the most hateful diatribes regarding President Donald J. Trump that I have yet heard on this journey. This individual truly believed that Donald Trump was the reason for all of the suffering that we have today. This individual truly believed in their heart that redirecting the world to clean green energy vis-a-vis the Green New Deal and electric vehicles was the way of the future. This individual remained convinced that Putin is the most evil man and the most dangerous man in the world, and that he is going to set off a chain of events, that is going to kill us all, in his words. And so, understanding that that particular point of view still holds a large amount of sway with a large majority of the population of the world, we cannot simply flip this on its head before we are ready. We have to prime that consciousness. We have to prime all of the sleepers out there, because we have to arrive at a point where civil war on a mass scale, in not just in the United States, but in countries around the world that have had problems with it before, is simply not possible. We are allowing them to walk themselves into their own destruction. We set in process a plan to accelerate their agenda so catastrophically that they became careless and fumbling. We have taken steps with military justice along the way to neutralize or extract certain assets, replace them with plants, um, infiltration of our own, if you will. We have been exacting justice on the majority of the upper echelon of what you would call the Illuminati or the Illuminati Kabbalist secret societies for some time now. But that doesn't mean that there are not still many, many opponents, many, many combatants that have to be dealt with and that still have sway and are in positions of power. And so, this operation, as we progress forward, this is supposed to be a message of hope, because with something like that pandemic treaty or something more egregious than that, we would have an instantaneous situation where militaries all around the world, all of whom would be participants to this pandemic treaty, of which it has 194 signatories, those militaries, those patriot militaries within those nations and those parties would then have cause to seize their governments and return the world to a state of order. And we know that Nasera Jacera has to be rolled out fairly quickly. It has to cascade sort of all around the world in a very short period of time so that we can transition to the new system with the least amount of mass societal disruption possible. And so, something like this, where we already have these signatory nations identified as who they are, if these nations are also lawfully signed on in the background to something like GESERA or the QFS system of commerce, or a pre-BRICS sort of, or excuse me, a post-BRICS sort of arrangement, then that would be a perfect transition to simply remove the Manchurians, the traitors, the Kabbalist puppets at all levels of these governments that are signed on to this particular treaty or others, um, and simply transition the whole of that body into a new way of life, a new understanding of what an alliance really is between nations and between peoples. And so that's where we're going to kind of veer off here and conclude for the evening with some positivity. We are only here at this point because we, the people, have figured it out. We, the people, have realized that we can connect instantaneously, that we can share thought, and that we are mostly of the same creed. Um, it doesn't really matter the particulars that we've always allowed to divide us between religious perspectives, false racism, false caste systems that have been created for us and that we've been placed into to foster division and resentment. Um, None of that matters. We are all one people. We are one world. We are one free mankind. And our ability to connect and share that has awoken us to the importance of just exactly that, being able to have the conversation and to share the information. The information has always been controlled by these evil ones. It is controlled by them no more. As we proceed through this, we will have the ability to hear countering narratives, and we already have. We'll have the ability to see who turns out correct and who turns out incorrect. But we will also develop the ability to research on our own, taking no particular presentation or viewpoint directly all of the way to heart. I encourage each of you to look up even what you hear on my files and others as well. It's very important to double check the information. And as we go through this process, we're able finally as a people to double check the information and then discuss it amongst ourselves, critically analyze it, break it down, draw conclusions, and then go deeper. That's part of what understanding and the search for truth is all about. We are well into that process. Um, and that should be one of those sorry, my little one is crying. Give me just a moment. I'll be right back. My apologies for that short delay. I'll be perfectly honest, I have absolutely no idea what I was um, speaking to or saying, so I'm just going to kind of roll into that positive conclusion. We win this because we have the ability to connect. We win this because we, the people, have become an integral part of a much broader, much deeper, um, much more complex military operation than we ever could have imagined. And so that, along with, the Almighty, source of all, the love that sustains the breath of every living thing, those are where my hope is found. I draw my hope from the coded messages that we often examine. I draw my hope from the way the Commander in Chief and President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, holds and conducts himself. I draw my hope from that deep peace, knowing that um, the battle we are all undertaking will safeguard my little one's future and his little ones and their little ones and their little ones. Nothing can stop us. There's nothing that can stop us. We have forced them into the destruction of their own system. We have taken a great deal of their things, and we are continuing to take what is left. We are slowly but assuredly destroying the ability of the propaganda machine known as the deep state and mainstream media arm of the deep state at every turn. We are reclaiming bastions of filth, pedophilia, child trafficking, and we are either destroying them or converting them, those facilities and those institutions, for good and redirecting them to help us end this war rather than perpetuate and prolong it. Nothing can stop us, and they know it. They are desperately afraid. That's why we're seeing such a rapid progression of events. They know time is short. They know without the loyalty of several of the militaries around the world, and without the protection guaranteed by the Phoenician families and the central banking system masters, that this is simply a ticking time bomb. Eventually, the bomb will go off, and we will be living in a new, improved, glorious world. And so it's my hope that each of you out there tonight remembers that you are a part of a much larger whole, and that you are very important in your own right, but that you are also essential to the freedom and security and future of that larger whole. Appreciate your importance in this. That's not to say be self important, but appreciate your level of awareness at this stage in the game and how you will be able to influence those around you, those who come to you, and most likely for many of you, you will become community figureheads and community speakers in your areas, as you will be one of those cuckoo crazies that actually got all of it correct. And so, with that, everyone, I hope you have a wonderful evening. I'll be back with you again soon. This is SGAnon. Have a great evening. Thank you. Bye bye.